The crimson sun of Zitherus III was setting over the jagged crystal mountains, casting an ethereal glow across the opalescent palace that floated above the planet's toxic atmosphere. Princess Althea stood at her observation deck, her luminescent wings shimmering with iridescent patterns as she gazed through the energy shield at the swirling purple clouds below. Her delicate tendrils, which served both as sensory organs and expressions of emotion, were trembling with barely contained excitement. For centuries, their species had maintained strict isolation from other civilizations, adhering to the ancient protocols that forbade interaction with lesser-evolved species. Yet here she stood, having just witnessed something extraordinary through her quantum telescope, a human spacecraft navigating the perilous asteroid field that surrounded their hidden world. The ship's primitive technology should have been no match for the gravitational anomalies, yet it danced through them with what could only be described as grace under pressure. Althea's heart resonated at a frequency that made her entire body hum, a biological response to intense emotional stimulation that was both thrilling and terrifying. She had studied Earth's inhabitants extensively through their cultural broadcasts and intercepted communications. Humans fascinated her with their paradoxical nature, capable of both devastating violence and breathtaking compassion, of creating beauty while destroying their own environment. But most compelling was their capacity for love, a concept that, despite her advanced understanding of universal languages, she struggled to fully comprehend. Her mother, Queen Seraphina, would undoubtedly disapprove of her interest in this particular human vessel. The Royal Council had long warned against contamination by outside influences, especially those from species still grappling with their own destructive tendencies. Yet Althea couldn't shake the feeling that destiny had brought this particular ship to their corner of the galaxy at this precise moment in time. Through the ship's external cameras, she had observed its lone occupant, a male human with striking features and eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. His movements spoke of determination and courage, qualities that resonated deeply with her own nature. As she watched him navigate his craft through impossible odds, she felt something stir within her that defied all logic and protocol. The princess knew she was playing a dangerous game, one that could jeopardize everything her family had worked to protect. But there was something about this human, something beyond his physical form or even his demonstrated skills. It was in the way he spoke to his ship, the tenderness in his voice when recording messages meant for ears that might never hear them. There was a depth to his being that transcended the primitive label her people had assigned to humanity. As the last rays of Zitherus' sun disappeared behind the horizon, Althea made a decision that would alter the course of her life forever. She activated the communication array, carefully masking her signal to avoid detection by the royal monitoring systems. With trembling tendrils, she reached out across the void, hoping to establish contact with the mysterious human who had captured her imagination in a way no other being ever had. The transmission crackled to life, carrying her voice, modulated to sound more human-like, across the distance between their worlds. Earth vessel, this is Princess Althea of Zitherus III. I mean you no harm, but I must speak with you. Her words hung in the silence of space, each second of waiting feeling like an eternity. The gravity of her actions pressed upon her consciousness, yet she found herself unable to turn back. When the human finally responded, his voice carried a mixture of astonishment and cautious curiosity that sent waves of excitement through her crystalline body. They began exchanging information, each word building a bridge between their vastly different worlds. Althea marveled at how easily they communicated despite their species' differences, finding common ground in their shared wonder at the universe's mysteries. Their conversation stretched into the night cycle of Zitherus, each exchange drawing them closer together. Through their dialogue, Althea discovered aspects of human culture that resonated deeply with her own experiences. The importance of family bonds, the pursuit of knowledge, and the desire to transcend limitations. The human stories of Earth's beauty and fragility touched something primal within her, awakening a protective instinct she hadn't known she possessed. Yet with each passing moment, the reality of their situation became more apparent. The energy required to maintain their secret communication was draining resources from the palace's cloaking system, and already she could detect subtle fluctuations in the shield's integrity. More concerning was the growing certainty that her mother would soon discover her transgression. The Queen's psychic network extended throughout the royal domain, and Althea knew it was only a matter of time before her forbidden activities were detected. Despite these dangers, Althea found herself increasingly drawn to the human's presence. Their connection transcended mere intellectual exchange. It touched something fundamental in her being. Each conversation revealed new depths to his character, his resilience in the face of adversity, his capacity for empathy, and his unwavering hope for a better future. These qualities, so rare among her own kind, stirred a longing within her that she could neither deny nor fully understand. The princess's quarters buzzed with nervous energy as she prepared for what she knew would be the most pivotal moment of her existence. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed erratically, betraying her inner turmoil as she approached her mother's private chamber. The massive crystalline doors parted silently, revealing Queen Seraphina standing amidst a garden of floating light orbs, each representing a decision point in their civilization's history. "Mother," Althea began, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her, "there is something of great importance I must share with you." The queen turned slowly, her ancient eyes reflecting countless lifetimes of wisdom and sacrifice. Between them stretched not just the physical space of the chamber, but centuries of tradition and expectation that weighed heavily on the younger princess's shoulders. "I have encountered a human," Althea continued, watching as her mother's expression hardened. "Not just any human, but one who possesses qualities we have long forgotten in our pursuit of perfection. He carries within him the potential to help us rediscover what it means to truly live, rather than merely exist." Queen Seraphina's tendrils stiffened, broadcasting shock waves through the chamber. "You dare bring this before me? After everything we've sacrificed to maintain our purity?" Her voice resonated through the space, causing several light orbs to dim in response to the emotional disturbance. "Do you not understand the danger you've placed us in? The council has already begun questioning the unusual energy signatures emanating from your quarters." Althea stepped forward, her wings folding protectively around her. "Mother, please listen. This isn't about rebellion or defiance. When I observe him, I see reflected back at me the very essence of what makes life precious. His imperfections are not weaknesses, but strengths that allow him to grow, to adapt, to feel deeply. Isn't that what our ancestors sought when they first ventured beyond our atmosphere?" The queen's aura darkened, swirling with colors of deep violet and crimson. "Your naivety blinds you to the truth. Humanity is still in its infancy, capable of unspeakable destruction. Do you not recall the archives documenting their wars, their environmental devastation? How many species have perished because of their reckless expansion? But isn't that precisely why we should intervene?" Althea countered, her own aura beginning to brighten. "If we turn away now, aren't we guilty of the same cowardice we accuse them of? We have the power to guide, to help them avoid the mistakes that could lead to their extinction. And perhaps in doing so, we might learn something valuable ourselves." A sudden tremor ran through the palace, causing several of the floating orbs to shatter. The queen's expression shifted from anger to something deeper, fear. "You don't understand the forces you're dealing with. The High Council has already sensed your unauthorized communications. If they discover the extent of your involvement—" "I'm willing to face whatever consequences come," Althea declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "But first, I must ask you this. Mother, have you ever truly loved? Not the calculated alliances we form, not the careful arrangements for genetic perfection, but the kind of love that sets your essence ablaze, that makes you want to rewrite the stars themselves." For the first time in centuries, Queen Seraphina's composure cracked. Memories long buried surfaced in her mind, memories of her own youth, when she too had questioned the rigid structures of their society. She recalled the pain of suppressing those desires, the sacrifices made in the name of duty. Her tendrils drooped slightly, signaling internal conflict. "You speak of things you cannot possibly comprehend," the queen whispered, though her voice lacked its previous authority. "Love is not some romantic ideal from your human transmissions. It is a force that can destroy empires, shatter civilizations. Look at what happened to the Zorathians. Their obsession with emotional connections left them vulnerable to extinction. But isn't that risk worth taking?" Althea pressed, moving closer to her mother. "Isn't it better to burn brightly for a moment than to fade slowly into nothingness? Our people have become shadows of what we once were. Perfect, yes, but empty. We've lost our passion, our drive, our ability to truly connect with anything beyond our sterile protocols." The chamber grew deathly silent except for the soft hum of the remaining light orbs. Queen Seraphina's aura began to shift, cycling through colors that betrayed her inner struggle. You're asking me to gamble everything we've built on a human, a creature whose lifespan is but a blink compared to ours. Even if I agreed, the Council would never permit it. Then let me show them, Althea pleaded, her tendrils reaching toward her mother's. Let me demonstrate that love isn't just some primitive impulse, but a force that can elevate us beyond our current limitations. Mother, you taught me to value knowledge above all else. What greater knowledge could there be than understanding true connection? The Queen turned away, her form silhouetted against the shattered remains of the light orbs. You have until the next cycle to prove your case. But know this, if you fail, you will face judgment not just from the Council, but from the entire royal line. And I. Her voice caught, thick with emotion. I may not be able to protect you. Althea watched as her mother dissolved into a cascade of light particles, leaving her alone in the chamber. The weight of her decision settled heavily upon her shoulders, yet she felt a spark of hope igniting within her core. For the first time, she had glimpsed the possibility that her mother might understand, might remember what it felt like to dream beyond boundaries. The revelation struck during Althea's next communication with the human, whose name she had learned was Daniel. As they exchanged knowledge about their respective cultures, a pattern emerged that sent shockwaves through her consciousness. The mathematical sequences governing Daniel's spacecraft's navigation system bore uncanny resemblance to the sacred geometry embedded in Zytherian architecture, patterns thought to be unique to their species. This discovery plunged Althea into a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Her tendrils flickered erratically as she processed the implications. The similarities suggested either an ancient connection between their species or an unprecedented cosmic coincidence. Both possibilities challenged everything she had been taught about their evolutionary path and the supposed uniqueness of Zytherian development. Daniel's responses to her inquiries about Earth's ancient civilizations added another layer of complexity. He spoke of myths and legends containing descriptions remarkably similar to Zytherian technology, accounts dismissed by human scholars as pure fantasy. Yet when Althea cross-referenced these stories with her people's historical archives, she found correlations that defied rational explanation. The princess's research led her deep into restricted sections of the royal library, where she uncovered sealed records detailing encounters with early human astronauts. These documents, thought to be purely theoretical studies, contained actual footage of interactions between Zytherians and humans dating back centuries. The revelation shook her faith in the official narrative of their isolationist policy. Meanwhile, her relationship with Daniel deepened as they shared more intimate aspects of their lives. Through their exchanges, Althea began experiencing emotions previously unknown to her species, a spectrum of feelings that both terrified and exhilarated her. She found herself laughing at human humor, feeling genuine sorrow at tales of loss, and experiencing anticipation unlike anything she'd known before. These emotional breakthroughs manifested physically in unexpected ways. Her crystalline structure began exhibiting new properties, refracting light in patterns never before documented. The changes alarmed her attendants, who reported their concerns to the Queen. Yet when Althea examined these transformations scientifically, she discovered they aligned perfectly with evolutionary theories suggesting emotional development could trigger physical adaptation. The political ramifications of her discoveries grew increasingly complex. Members of the Royal Council, alerted by the unusual energy signatures from her quarters, began demanding explanations. Althea found herself walking a tightrope between her duties as a princess and her growing commitment to uncovering the truth about her species' past. Each revelation brought her closer to Daniel while simultaneously widening the chasm between her and traditional Zytherian values. Most disturbing were the encrypted files she stumbled upon in the royal archives, records of experiments conducted on early human visitors. The ethical implications of these discoveries weighed heavily on her conscience. She realized that her people's supposed superiority complex masked a history of exploitation and manipulation that contradicted everything she believed about their enlightened society. As she delved deeper into both her research and her relationship with Daniel, Althea began experiencing something unprecedented among her kind: dreams. Vivid, emotionally charged visions filled with imagery from both Zytherian and human cultures. These dreams suggested a possible psychic link forming between her and Daniel, a phenomenon that defied all known scientific principles of their respective species. The situation reached a critical point when Althea discovered that Daniel's spacecraft contained technology modified with components matching Zytherian design. This evidence of prior contact between their species threatened to unravel centuries of carefully maintained secrecy. The princess found herself torn between her loyalty to her people and her growing conviction that the truth needed to come to light, not just for her sake, but for the future of both species. In the grand audience chamber, beneath the pulsating light of Zitherus' twin moons, the royal council gathered in solemn formation. Althea stood at the center, her wings spread wide in defiance of protocol, as the holographic evidence of ancient human-Zytherian interactions materialized around them. The air crackled with tension as council members processed the implications of what they were witnessing. High Counselor Vorthan's auric patterns shifted to deep indigo, signaling grave concern. Princess Althea, you have presented us with evidence that challenges the very foundation of our society. If these records are authentic, it means our isolationist policies were based on deliberate misinformation. His tendrils twitched spasmodically, a sign of extreme agitation. From her position near the crystalline throne, Queen Seraphina observed the proceedings with conflicted emotions. Her daughter's revelations had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about their history. The council chamber itself seemed to resonate with the weight of centuries of deception, the ancient stones humming with remembered secrets. The mathematical correspondences between our technologies are too precise to be coincidental, Althea explained, projecting additional data streams into the chamber. Furthermore, analysis of human DNA samples collected during their early space missions shows markers consistent with Zytherian genetic influence. This suggests not just contact, but integration at a fundamental biological level. Council member Silra's translucent form shimmered with indignation. Even if this is true, it doesn't justify your reckless actions. Opening communication channels with a human vessel puts us all at risk. The energy signatures alone could attract unwanted attention from other galactic powers. But isn't that precisely the point? Althea countered, her voice echoing through the chamber. We've hidden in plain sight for millennia, observing while others evolved. Our so-called purity has made us stagnant. The human race, flawed as it is, continues to push boundaries we've long since abandoned. Their very imperfections drive them forward. The debate intensified as additional council members joined in. Some argued for immediate termination of all contact with the human vessel, while others expressed cautious interest in exploring the implications of Althea's findings. The chamber's atmospheric controls struggled to maintain stability as emotional energies surged through the space. Queen Seraphina finally intervened, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. Enough. We must consider the broader implications. If what Althea has uncovered is true, then our entire understanding of our place in the universe is flawed. We have prided ourselves on our advancement, yet we've remained prisoners of our own making. A hollow projection of Daniel's spacecraft appeared, showing real-time data of its position relative to Zitherus 3. The craft's trajectory suggested it was attempting to maintain orbit despite increasing gravitational anomalies. Althea watched with growing anxiety as technical readouts indicated declining fuel reserves and structural stress. This human, continued the Queen, has demonstrated remarkable skill in navigating our asteroid field. According to our observations, he survived conditions that should have destroyed his vessel multiple times over. Such resilience speaks to qualities we have long suppressed in our pursuit of perfection. Councilmember Jarek's aura brightened with realization. Perhaps this is more than just a question of policy. The princess's emotional development, triggered by her interactions with this human, suggests our understanding of evolution might be incomplete. Could it be that our species requires external stimuli to advance beyond our current state? The chamber fell silent as this possibility sank in. Althea seized the moment to present her most compelling argument. Mother, esteemed council members, consider this. Our stagnation isn't just technological or cultural, it's existential. We've become so focused on maintaining our purity that we've forgotten how to truly live. The human's presence here, at this moment, represents an opportunity for renewal. High Counselor Vorthan's expression softened as he processed this perspective. What you propose goes against everything we've believed. To embrace this change would require dismantling centuries of established doctrine. The social and political ramifications are necessary, Queen Seraphina interjected. If we continue down our current path, we risk becoming fossils of our former selves, beautiful, yes, but ultimately lifeless. Perhaps what we need is exactly what Althea suggests, a catalyst for transformation. The chamber's atmosphere shifted as council members began considering this radical possibility. Data streams continued to flow around them, painting a picture of two species whose destinies were more intertwined than anyone had suspected. Outside, the moons cast shifting patterns of light across the palace grounds, mirroring the changing perspectives within the council chamber. As the debate continued, Althea noticed something unprecedented. Several council members were beginning to exhibit emotional responses similar to her own. Their auric patterns showed fluctuations that hadn't been seen in generations, suggesting that the mere discussion of these revolutionary ideas was triggering evolutionary changes throughout their species. "We must proceed with caution," Queen Seraphina concluded. "But proceed we must. Althea, you have until the next cycle to present a comprehensive plan for integrating these revelations into our society. However, the human vessel's deteriorating condition presents an immediate concern. We cannot ignore the fact that his survival is now directly linked to our decisions." The chamber's holographic displays shifted to show detailed schematics of Daniel's spacecraft. Althea's tendrils trembled as she processed the severity of his situation. The council's attention turned to practical matters: how to assist the human without violating their isolation protocols, how to manage the energy signatures that were now undeniable to any advanced species monitoring the sector. As the formal proceedings drew to a close, Althea approached her mother. "Thank you for hearing me out. I know this goes against everything you've fought to protect." The queen placed a tendril on her daughter's shoulder, transmitting complex emotions that defied verbal expression. "The question now," Queen Seraphina mused, "is whether we have the courage to embrace the change we've spent centuries avoiding. Your human has given us more than just a dilemma. He's given us a chance to redefine what it means to be Zytherian." Throughout the palace, subtle changes began manifesting in response to the council's deliberations. Ancient protocols governing interspecies contact were being rewritten, energy distribution patterns adjusted to accommodate increased shielding requirements, and security measures enhanced to protect against potential external threats. The very fabric of Zytherian society was beginning to shift, responding to the introduction of concepts long considered taboo. Althea moved through the transformed corridors, her steps carrying the weight of both hope and apprehension. The palace's crystalline walls now pulsed with new frequencies, adapting to the heightened emotional states of its inhabitants. Servants and courtiers, once strictly regimented in their duties, exhibited unprecedented behaviors: spontaneous laughter, unscripted conversations, and tentative emotional expressions that would have been unthinkable mere cycles ago. The princess's chambers had become a nexus of activity, with specialists from various disciplines converging to analyze the implications of recent revelations. Biologists studied the physiological changes occurring in those exposed to human emotional frequencies, while historians worked to piece together a more complete picture of past interactions between their species. Technicians monitored the increasing instability in Daniel's orbit, calculating the precise moment when intervention would become unavoidable. Queen Seraphina's transformation was perhaps the most profound. The once stoic ruler now spent hours in meditation, her aura displaying complex patterns as she processed centuries of suppressed emotions. Her decisions, once guided solely by logic and tradition, now incorporated considerations of compassion and empathy, qualities that were rapidly spreading through the royal court. Among the general population, rumors of the unfolding events had sparked unprecedented curiosity about human culture. Young Zytherians, particularly drawn to Earth's artistic expressions, began experimenting with creative pursuits previously deemed impractical. Music composed using human scales filled the airways, while visual artists attempted to replicate the emotional intensity of human artwork using their own bioluminescent capabilities. The council itself underwent significant restructuring. Traditional positions based purely on genetic lineage gave way to merit-based appointments, with emotional intelligence now considered as crucial as technical expertise. Emergency protocols were rewritten to account for scenarios involving emotional distress, and new departments were formed to study the intersection of feelings and decision-making. Energy resources were being reallocated at an unprecedented rate. The cloaking system protecting Zythera 3 required constant adjustment to mask the increased activity, while additional power was directed to maintaining Daniel's failing orbit. Engineers worked tirelessly to develop solutions that would allow for safe contact without compromising the planet's security. Most significantly, a growing movement emerged among the younger generation, calling for fundamental reforms in Zytherian society. Inspired by Althea's courage and the revelations about their shared history with humans, these reformers advocated for greater openness and emotional expression. Their gatherings, initially small and secretive, expanded rapidly as more citizens embraced the changes sweeping through their world. Amidst these transformations, Althea found herself at the center of a cultural revolution she had inadvertently sparked. Her daily routines were filled with meetings, research sessions, and diplomatic negotiations. Yet despite the chaos, she felt more alive than ever before. The rigid structures that had once defined Zytherian existence were giving way to something new and unpredictable. A society learning to balance its advanced intellect with the raw power of emotion. The princess's relationship with Daniel continued to evolve, their communications growing more frequent and intimate as the barriers between their worlds began to dissolve. Through their connection, Althea witnessed firsthand how human emotions could catalyze growth and change, while Daniel marveled at the sophisticated beauty of Zytherian culture. Their bond served as a living testament to the potential benefits of interspecies cooperation. As the deadline for action approached, the entire planet seemed to hold its breath. The outcome of Althea's crusade would determine not just her fate, but the future direction of Zytherian civilization. The old order was crumbling, yet what would rise in its place remained uncertain. In every corridor, every chamber, every glowing crystal of the floating palace, the question lingered. Could two such different species find common ground, or would their encounter mark the beginning of a new era of conflict? The answer, Althea realized, lay not just in the decisions of the council or the acceptance of her people, but in something far more fundamental. The willingness of both species to embrace vulnerability, to acknowledge that true strength often lies in opening oneself to the unknown. As she prepared for what might be her final communication with Daniel before the council's ultimate decision, she felt the weight of countless possibilities pressing upon her consciousness. Between dimensions of protocol and possibility, the princess stood at her observation deck once more, watching as Daniel's vessel fought against the gravitational pull that threatened to drag it into Zithris III's atmosphere. Her tendrils vibrated with a symphony of emotions, hope, fear, determination, as she processed the monumental changes sweeping through her world. The floating palace now hummed with a different kind of energy, one that combined centuries of Zytherian tradition with the raw, unfiltered passion of human emotion. Through their continued communications, Althea and Daniel had developed a form of resonance that defied conventional understanding. Their thoughts intersected in ways that blurred the lines between species, creating a hybrid consciousness that neither fully comprehended yet both desperately needed. Each transmission carried more than words or data. It transmitted fragments of soul, pieces of identity that merged and transformed in the vast space between their worlds. The council's debates had evolved into something far more complex than simple policy discussions. What began as a trial of Althea's actions had transformed into a fundamental re-examination of Zytherian identity. Ancient texts were being reinterpreted, historical records reanalyzed, and societal structures reconsidered through the lens of emotional intelligence. The very language they used to describe their existence was changing, incorporating human concepts that added depth and nuance to their formerly rigid definitions. Queen Seraphina's transformation embodied this shift most dramatically. The once impenetrable monarch now presided over council meetings with an aura of compassionate authority that inspired both awe and trust among her subjects. Her decisions, informed by newly awakened emotional awareness, demonstrated a wisdom that transcended traditional logic. The palace gardens, once meticulously ordered, now flourished with wild, untamed beauty, a physical manifestation of the changes occurring throughout Zytherian society. Yet for every step forward, challenges arose that tested the limits of this newfound openness. Conservative factions within the council resisted change, warning of potential contamination of their pure bloodlines and cultural heritage. Energy signatures from increased activity around Daniel's vessel attracted intermittent scans from distant sectors, forcing the palace's cloaking systems to operate at unprecedented levels. The strain on resources threatened to destabilize their carefully maintained equilibrium. Althea's own evolution accelerated beyond anything recorded in Zytherian history. Her crystalline structure adapted to accommodate the flood of human emotions, developing new facets and resonances that baffled even their most advanced scientists. Her wings, once symbols of regal dignity, now expressed a rainbow of emotional states that influenced everyone around her. Through her, the palace itself seemed to breathe with renewed vitality. The human vessel's situation grew increasingly critical. Its systems, pushed beyond designed limits, began to show signs of cascading failures. Althea monitored the situation with growing anxiety, knowing that each passing moment brought them closer to a point of no return. Yet she also recognized that Daniel's presence had become more than just a technical problem to solve. It represented the fulcrum upon which the future of two species balanced. Throughout the palace, evidence of cultural fusion multiplied. Art installations combining Zytherian light patterns with human abstract expressionism adorned the halls. Musical compositions merged crystalline harmonics with Earth's pentatonic scales, creating sounds that resonated on both biological and spiritual levels. Scientific research teams, once segregated by discipline, now collaborated in unprecedented ways, blending emotional intuition with logical analysis. The young generation of Zytherians, inspired by Althea's example, began experimenting with forms of self-expression that would have been unthinkable just cycles ago. Poetry readings, once formal recitations of technical achievements, evolved into emotional explorations of identity and purpose. Social gatherings transformed from rigid ceremonies into fluid exchanges of ideas and feelings, challenging centuries-old conventions of interaction. As the situation reached critical mass, Althea found herself embodying the very change she had championed. Her presence in the council chamber no longer commanded respect through royal authority alone. It inspired genuine admiration and belief in the possibility of transformation. The tendrils of her being, once instruments of formal communication, now transmitted complex emotional states that united rather than divided. The final decision loomed ahead, carrying with it the weight of two species' futures. Energy readings indicated that Daniel's vessel would require assistance within the next rotation, assistance that would necessarily reveal Zithyrus III's location to any monitoring species. The Council faced its greatest test, to maintain centuries of secrecy or to embrace the unknown consequences of revelation. Through it all, Althea remained connected to Daniel, their resonance growing stronger with each passing moment. Their bond had transcended individual identities, becoming a bridge between worlds that neither fully understood yet both desperately needed. As she prepared for what might be their final communication before the Council's verdict, she felt the convergence of countless possibilities pressing upon her consciousness. The outcome remained uncertain, suspended between the weight of tradition and the promise of transformation. Yet in that uncertainty lay the seed of something extraordinary. The potential for two species to redefine not just their relationship, but their very understanding of what it meant to exist in harmony with the universe. The floating palace hovered above the toxic atmosphere, its crystalline spires catching the light of twin moons, as Zytherian society stood poised on the brink of its greatest evolution. Far beyond Zithyrus III's protected sphere, ripples of change spread through the galactic community. Advanced species monitoring the sector had detected anomalous energy signatures that defied conventional explanation. The interplay of emotions between Althea and Daniel created harmonic disturbances in the quantum field, generating patterns that resonated across light years. These vibrations, though subtle, carried encoded information about the unprecedented fusion of Zytherian and human consciousness. Among the elder races, ancient prophecies began to surface, texts long dismissed as mythological speculation that spoke of a time when emotion and intellect would merge to create a new form of existence. The phenomenon unfolding on Zithyrus III matched these predictions with alarming accuracy, prompting increased scrutiny from civilizations that had previously regarded the sector as insignificant. Within the local star cluster, diplomatic tensions began to shift. Species that had maintained uneasy truces based on mutual fear of Zytherian technological superiority now speculated about the implications of their emotional awakening. Trade routes adjusted their trajectories, military formations realigned, and intelligence networks redirected their focus toward the previously isolated world. The very fabric of regional politics began to warp around the gravitational pull of Zytherian transformation. On Earth, though unaware of the specific events unfolding light years away, human creativity experienced an inexplicable surge. Artists reported vivid dreams of crystalline beings and floating palaces, scientists made breakthroughs in quantum resonance theory, and musicians composed works that seemed to echo alien harmonics. These phenomena, dismissed by skeptics as coincidence, followed patterns that correlated precisely with the emotional fluctuations emanating from Zithyrus III. The human vessel's continued presence in Zytherian space created additional complications. Its primitive communication systems, modified with Zytherian components, broadcast unconscious signals that interacting civilizations interpreted as evidence of forbidden technology sharing. Several major powers began mobilizing reconnaissance units, citing concerns about potential weapons development that could upset the galactic balance of power. Back on Zitherus 3, these external pressures compounded the internal challenges facing Althea and her people. The cloaking system, already strained by increased activity, now had to mask not just their physical presence but the expanding emotional field generated by their evolving society. Quantum physicists working on containment solutions discovered that the very act of suppressing these emissions created feedback loops that threatened to expose them further. The Council's deliberations took on new urgency as reports of approaching scout vessels arrived. Military strategists, trained for conflict resolution through superior technology, found themselves grappling with the unprecedented prospect of defending emotional vulnerability against physical attack. Defensive protocols had to be completely reimagined to protect not just physical structures but the delicate web of interspecies connection that had begun to form. Most significantly, the resonance between Althea and Daniel had grown beyond individual consciousness to affect the surrounding space-time continuum. Their combined emotional frequencies created standing waves that altered local gravitational fields, affecting the orbits of nearby celestial bodies. This phenomenon, while providing temporary stability for Daniel's vessel, posed long-term risks to the entire star system's equilibrium. As these cosmic repercussions multiplied, Althea found herself serving as both anchor and conduit for the transformation sweeping through multiple dimensions of existence. Her presence acted as a focusing lens for the disparate energies converging on Zitherus 3, channeling them into patterns that hinted at emerging order from apparent chaos. Yet the strain of maintaining this balance manifested in physical changes to her crystalline structure, causing her to emit light spectra never before recorded. The situation reached critical mass as multiple factors converged: Daniel's failing systems requiring immediate intervention, approaching scout vessels demanding strategic response, and the growing instability of local space-time threatening catastrophic collapse. Each element of the crisis interconnected with others in ways that defied conventional analysis, creating a web of causality that challenged even Zytherian predictive models. Through this maelstrom of change, Althea maintained her connection with Daniel, their resonance serving as both lifeline and beacon. The human's continued presence, though technically problematic, had become essential to the stability of the entire system. His emotional state influenced not just Althea's well-being but the very fabric of reality surrounding them, creating a feedback loop that neither species fully understood but both intuitively recognized as vital. As the final pieces of this cosmic puzzle began falling into place, the distinction between individual fates and collective destiny blurred. The question of whether Althea could keep her human husband evolved from personal desire to universal necessity. Their union, once a matter of royal protocol and species preservation, had transformed into something far more fundamental, a keystone in the arch of galactic evolution. The floating palace, its crystalline spires now vibrating with the combined frequencies of two species' hopes and fears, stood at the center of a transformation that would reshape not just Zytherian society but potentially the entire structure of interstellar relations. The choice before them, to emerge from isolation or retreat further into secrecy, carried consequences that extended far beyond their immediate circumstances. As the council convened for their final decision, Althea and Daniel's resonance reached its peak, stabilizing the collapsing space-time around them. The approaching scout vessels paused, their sensors overwhelmed by the harmonic frequencies radiating from Zitherus 3. Queen Seraphina, her aura now a brilliant tapestry of emotion and wisdom, declared that the time for hiding was over. The cloaking system dissolved, revealing Zitherus 3 to the galaxy as a beacon of unity and transformation. Althea stepped forward, her tendrils intertwining with Daniel's consciousness across the void, signaling their bond to all who watched. Cheers erupted from within the palace as the younger generations celebrated their newfound place in the cosmos. The human vessel, stabilized by the combined efforts of both species, began its descent toward the planet. Across the stars, other civilizations felt the ripple of change, their own societies stirred by the example of courage and connection. In that moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the birth of something unprecedented. Althea whispered to her mother, "This is just the beginning." And as the first rays of hope pierced through the twilight of uncertainty, two worlds became one.